Hi, welcome to Sustaining Your Coalition Roadmap for Success, Module 6. Today we will be talking about funding. This is part one of a two-part um, module on funding. So next one today we're talking about putting a value on the time and talent you have in your coalition. The next one we're going to talk about going out there and using this value and going out there and getting more money to match it and to grow where you would find additional treasure. So time, talent, and treasure is part of the motto of the Center for Appalachian Philanthropy. As always, our goals for today are to learn the basics and importance of how to estimate the value of the time donated to your organization and ways to use this. We also want you to learn whether this estimate can be counted as a cash donation and when it should be counted as an in-kind donation. So we'll spend some time on that and we'll go over the difference. First, we always want to review what is sustainability. And what it comes down to is everything a program needs to keep going over time. What do you need to do things today, tomorrow, next year, and so on. Why sustainability? Again, because you want to keep doing things. You want to keep helping make our communities better, healthier places. And it really means having the time, talent, and treasure to achieve broad objectives, such as reducing diabetes in our communities, which it's devastating to, and preventing diabetes from future generations, not just reducing current impact of diabetes. So sustainability is absolutely critical to the work we do. Reviewing the previous modules, Module 1 talked about partnerships, and all of these you can go back and either find on DVD from us, or they should be on our YouTube channel, their Facebook. If you want to watch them again or watch them for the first time and can't find them, just let us know and we'll be happy to get you in touch get you the materials. So Module 1, we talked about partnerships, and this is the core of what a community coalition is. It's a collaboration between everybody at the table. It's partnerships. And just go over who you need at the table and how to get them there. Module 2, we discussed developing political support and the role, why it's important to your coalition, and the role of a champion and how a champion can really help you achieve broad objectives. We also talk a lot about letters of support. Political support is not something to fear. It is your natural ally in getting things done. And it's easy. You don't have to be, so partisan as we're in the middle of an election season. It's much more basic and simple than that. Module 3, we reviewed organizational capacity and the resources required for organizational capacity. What do you need for your organization to grow and to do what you want to do? Module 4, we talked about strategic planning, and strategic planning is really planning for your success. And a strategic plan and a financial plan need to be aligned. We also reviewed our strengths, opportunities, and challenges approach to analyzing your strategic plan and creating a strategic plan. Module 5, we discussed program evaluation and looked at what, when, and why you want to evaluate your programs and some different types and different tools to evaluate those programs. We really used the Building Our Understanding Key Concepts of Evaluation from the CDC. It is a great document, and I strongly recommend reading it in addition to viewing the module we have created. So today we're talking about valuing time and talent. Time is money, as the old phrase says. And really, time is money, but how do we put a value on it? How do we calculate how much money the time is worth? And we're going to show you 3 different ways of doing that. And each method has some strengths and weaknesses. You'll use it in each time. So But the key is we can establish a dollar value for the donation of the time and talent your coalition receives. So why? Why, why do you want to put a value on it? Well, so you know what you have, and so you can use it most effectively. A lot of people don't realize how valuable their community meeting time is, their broad coalition meeting time is, or the meeting time of their board of directors is. These meetings often have value of several hundred to even a few $1,000s per hour. So once you start realizing how valuable that time is, it helps you be more efficient with it. You also want to show the community the support and involvement your coalition has. And nothing does that like putting a hard dollar amount. You know, our coalition received $20,000 in donations worth of time. You know, so you're saying you're giving them a number that people understand. You also want to use it as a match for other donations. Particularly grants want a match usually. State and federal grants almost always want some sort of match. You're going to hear me talk about cash versus in-kind in donations, and I'm going to go over this more later in the module, but just briefly, a cash donation is money or property changing hands. It does not mean it has to change into your hands, but it has to change hands. An in-kind donation is a donation that is not directly connected to money or property changing hands. And most often this is volunteer services or the use of property, such as a meeting room or somebody who is not on the clock working, volunteering to do something. So, you know, attending a meeting or manning a booth or doing any number of things where they're not being paid by somebody else. If they're being paid by somebody else, it's a cash match. So, because money or property is changing hands. Again, doesn't have to change into your hands, just has to change hands as a result of the work you're doing. And you know, a little bit of common sense goes a long way with this. Also, if you have questions, ask. We're going to go over several things. I'm going to give you some resources to figure this out on your own, but don't hesitate to ask. Credibility and establishing the value of time and talent. People aren't always used to hearing numbers or figuring out numbers like this, and oftentimes people are very surprised at how much the value of a meeting, how high the value of meeting time is. So you want to show your credibility. Always describe the method you used, show the math directly, and cite a source for the method. In particular, show the dollar amount, show how you came up with the dollar amount assigned for each hour of time, and cite a source for this amount. Again, sources are key to credibility, and you know, it may seem almost old-fashioned, like you're back in elementary school writing out your math, but you need to do that to demonstrate, to reinforce that these numbers are legitimate and to be taken seriously, and that they are correct. There are three ways we're going to show you how to value time and talent. These are the most common ways to measure the value of member time, and many of these were outlined by the RGK Center for Philanthropy and Community Service at the University of Texas at Austin. We've provided a link to part of this from philanthropy.com, and click on it, read that whole blog post, save that blog post, just kind of set it aside is what we recommend, and then you can refer to it back as you need to, besides this webinar and other things. But it becomes a very, again, you're citing a credible source. So a Center for Philanthropy at a major university is a credible source. So going over the three methods briefly. Method number one, multiply the number of coalition member hours by the average hourly wage for a worker based on either local or national statistics. So how many members do you have attending a meeting? How long was the meeting? Factor in their travel time, multiply it by an average hourly wage. Two, this is another method. Calculate how much it would cost to hire paid employees to do the task. So if you had to pay somebody to do what the members are doing, how much would that cost you? Method number 3, calculate how much the member is being paid at his or her regular job for the number of hours contributed. This again is if somebody's on the clock and contributing time, that time involves money changing hands, so it is a cash match. So you can figure that out. And we're going to go over the pros and cons, explain these just a little bit. So method number 1, multiply the number of coalition member hours by the average hourly wage. So in this case, we're using, in this example, we're using an hour is worth $22.55. This comes from independent sector, volunteer time, and I believe they figure it from some census and BLS government, United States government numbers. They go through their process of showing you how they figure it. It changes every year. And here is the key, is just citing it from a credible source. Independent sector would be considered a very credible source on this. Now, if that time is being used to perform specific professional tasks, such as a lawyer, an accountant, or a nutritionist, or somebody who has a specific professional education and profession, you can find an estimate through the U.S. Government Bureau of Labor Statistics, BLS, website. That's only if they're these numbers are only valid if they're performing their specific task. For example, if a lawyer is cleaning up trash, they would be considered regular volunteer time, not at the lawyer rate, which I believe approaches $50 an hour. If they're not doing their professional task, then just use the regular rate. So one example we're going to use throughout all 3 methods is you have 20 people attending a 1-hour meeting, and they average a half hour of travel each way to get to that meeting. So hour of travel, each person's spending 2 hours of time, because travel time does count, to get to that for this meeting. So that's 40 hours of volunteer time. Multiply 40 times $22.55 per hour from our independent sector number, and you get $902. That is one way of valuing the 1-hour community coalition meeting you just had is worth $900 in time. But the value of it is $900. So more than most people would think. There are a few pros and cons to this, to method number 1, which again, multiply the number of coalition member hours based on an average hourly wage. The pro is it's usually the highest dollar amount, and it assigns value to each person. That may be something to think about when you're going through this. Everybody wants to feel valued. Everybody wants to believe they're important and feel valued. So this method does that. It says each person's contribution has a dollar value. The con is it must be listed as an in-kind match. It's not a cash match because you don't know exactly how much money is changing hands. You're making an estimate. You don't know a fairly exact number. Also, because you're valuing it on everybody, some people are not being paid to be there. So we'll go over that method later. This is best when a cash match is not needed. So if you're not using it for a specific grant match, this number is often a great one to use. So it will give you the highest dollar value. And like I said, it assigns value to each person. So you can say 20 members donated over $900. Valuing time and talent, our method number 2, is to calculate how much it would cost to hire paid employees to do the task. Now for meetings, this often undervalues them. So let's say a coalition meeting, again, decision making by management level staff, 3 people at 2 hours each at $53 an hour, and that's number from, again, the BLS website, values this at a total of $318.90. Well, that's a lot lower for meetings, this isn't the best way to do it. It does have use elsewhere, though, for some other things. One, flip down to the next slide. One is the pros and cons. It's very useful if you have to replace these members. So, for example, if they're volunteering to pick up trash at a festival, which has to be done, if they don't do it, you're going to have to pay somebody. So you would figure out what you'd have to pay them. So it's very useful for budgeting discussions. Our volunteers saved our organization $500 because we didn't have to pay a county work crew or a Boy Scout troop, a football team, whatever, the volleyball team, whatever, that money to pick up trash at our event, after our event. So it gives you a way to kind of figure out some real dollar value numbers that you're replacing, money you'd have to spend, and how much the volunteers reduce your organization's actual expenses. So, this is also the lowest dollar value amount. It's not useful for figuring out a match. It really is useful for budgeting discussions. If we can't get 20 people to volunteer to pick up trash, we're going to have to pay X amount. And that can also be useful in trying to motivate volunteers, because, hey, if we need people to do this, it saves us money directly. You can't say that if it's you can't say that for most of these other things. Excuse me, clicking a little too fast here. Method number 3, you're going to calculate how much a member is being paid at his or her regular job for the number of hours contributed. This is probably the most complicated of these 3 methods, but definitely has its uses. So if you have 20 people attending the meeting, all of them attend for 2 hours, and including their travel time, you want to go through the cost of what the member costs their employer per hour in salary and benefits, and I would point out salary and benefits is the cost. Benefits often account for a third or more, between 25% and 40% of compensation. So just because somebody's being paid $15 an hour by an employer doesn't mean they cost $15 an hour. They may cost as much as $21 an hour or so, depending on how much all the health care, retirement, Social Security taxes, all the other things are factored into it. And if you're on the management side, you really have to look at the cost of an employee, not their salary, just their salary. So going through, you have a cost per hour as self-reported by the coalition members. And again, there's your source, self-reported. And that's just the way to explain, to the coalition members, if you're here as part of your professional duties, part of your job, please let us know roughly what you cost an hour. It will be kept confidential. 20 people attending, 4 are retired. In this situation, they have no value. So 3 are on break from their job. Again, they have no value. 3 are on the clock. They cost their organization $15 an hour. That's a $90 contribution, but it's cash contribution. Again, 4 on the clock and cost their organization $20 per hour. Their contribution is $160. 4 on the clock and cost their organization $30 per hour. So they're being paid probably around $22.50. And you can see if they're costing their organization $30 an hour, that's a substantial donation. 2 are on the clock, cost $50 per hour. Maybe they're managers at an organization or other professionals, lawyers, nurses, some other profession. Either way, you're asking people to self-report this. So you would just say, for credibility's sake, self-reported. This adds up to a $690 contribution for that meeting. Now, because these are actual expenses, i.e. cash is changing hands, money is changing hands, it can be listed as a cash contribution to your organization on your grant applications and others. I'm not going to get into tax returns. Ask your accountant, talk to your accountant. That's tax law. That's very different, and I'm not your accountant. And so you need to talk with your accountant how they want to do it. But for grant purposes, if you spent this whole meeting discussing a given grant, you can say that this is a $690 cash match towards that grant. For grants, you would use, if you spent half the time in a meeting, you would use half this estimate as a cash match. We'll go over that, pros and cons. So we're calculating how much the member is paid at the regular job and for the number of hours contributed. The pro is, again, this can be a cash match. The con is this is complicated. We had to break it up over 2 slides just to do the example. It's complicated. You got to figure out who's attending, how much they made, and it can be tough to get hourly costs reported. People may not want to share their salary information. They may not understand what their true cost is in terms of salary plus benefits, and this does not value every participant's time. And that, again, people want to feel valued. So you want to consider how you use this method and where. So, and again, it's best used for showing a cash match. When to best use each method. Again, each method provides a different amount, and we're going to go back in summary. Method 1, $902. Method 2, $318.90. Method 3, $690. These are all ways of calculating the exact same thing and figuring out, and tell it's, method 1 yields almost triple what method 2 does. So, this is a way of, you want to figure out when to use each method. And again, that's one reason you want to be very clear about which method when you're using these numbers, such as applying for grants, and you want to show how you calculated the number so that the grant funder understands that and so others understand it, and they get why you came up with that number. So going over, method 1 is best used when you don't need a cash match. Method 2, when you're having internal budgeting discussions. And method 3 for when you need a cash match or want to show a cash match. I want to go back over donation and really go into more of donations and cash versus in kind. So again, we said there are 2 types of donations. Cash, which is money or property changing hands, and that property can be, somebody physically gives you something, a piece of land, a bicycle, whatever, that has a defined value, a value you can define, and therefore is a cash match. Money, which is salary, don't just think of it as a check. It can also be a check directly to your organization. It can also be a salary. In kind are donations that are not directly connected. If you can't draw a straight line in explaining how it is connected to money or property changing hands, then it's an in-kind donation. And usually these are volunteer services or the use of property. Someone lets you use their meeting room. Maybe a cable company donates internet service. That would be something that is an in-kind match and not a cash match, because they're not losing money necessarily by providing you internet service. There is not money changing hands. So, and here's another definition, and this comes from the American Association of Colleges and Universities. Both these 2 questions do, and quoted verbatim. So how is cash defined? This is for one of their grants, but it really works for any of them. So, and we keep talking about grants. If you go through the grant rules and that funder has a different way of describing things and defining things, you got to use their rules. You got to use what they say, because it's the golden rule. He who has the money writes, or he who has the gold makes the rules. So here's an example of a cash match. Cash is an expense that will be directly incurred by the proposed initiative. So directly incurred, in other words, but does not mean it has to come to your organization, just incurred to advance this effort. So I'll let you read that. And we'll go on to how is in-kind funding defined? An in-kind match is composed of non-cash contributions and other of time, equipment, space, other items committed to the goals of the project. So you do want to document all of these matches. However you count this match, you want it to be documented and verifiable. That's again the credibility part of it. Both these questions actually come from the website listed just before on the previous slide as part of the Association of American Colleges and Universities webpage. So we come back to time. Is it cash or in kind? Now that we've discussed how to value the time and what cash or in kind is. And the first question is the person doing the work on the clock? Are they being compensated with real money by somebody as a direct result of this effort, program, organization, whatever? If so, the amount they are being compensated is a cash match. And again, we said compensated, not salary. So, we have cost of benefits. Another thing with meetings and others to not overlook is mileage. It can add up if somebody's driving 20, 30 miles each way to attend a meeting. If they're driving 20 miles each way, that's 40 miles round trip. At 50 cents a mile, that's another $20. Well, if that's $20 for everybody there in the room, that's $400. So, think about mileage. It adds up. A restricted cash match. You'll sometimes see this phrasing, or you may sometimes want to use it. It means money that in a budget line that can only be spent for certain things. So oftentimes, if you're uncomfortable about something, calling it an outright cash match, such as a salary, you can call it a restricted cash match. And some grants may want you to actually label things as a restricted cash match. Some programs, some organizations may want to label things that. Really, it's kind of either way. It's just something to think about. I don't mean to complicate this too much more, but if you're really uneasy about counting time as cash match, label it a restricted cash match. So, excuse me. Use of services such as internet access or use of a meeting room is usually an in-kind donation. I say usually because we can always come up with complicated situations where it might be something else. But if an organization normally rents out a meeting room and they're letting you use it because somebody works there or whichever reason, then that can be counted as an in-kind donation. Again, why does that matter, that whether it's cash or in kind? Well, most grants restrict how much of a match can be from in-kind donations. So, like I said in the beginning, a lot of grants, a lot of state grants I've seen particularly, and often federal, restrict how much of a match can count from in-kind. They don't think in-kind donations are as important or demonstrate as much community support as cash matches do. And that's understandable. Put your money, the old phrase, put your money where your mouth is. So again, a cash match is usually more impressive because it demonstrates stronger support from partners in the community. It means something. We're putting our money where our mouth is. So if an organization is really willing to support it, they're willing to pay their people to go participate or donate money or come up with lots of different ways. But it's more impressive to have a cash match. I know this gets a little complicated, and like I said, ask us if you have questions. Please stop, and if you have questions, please check these resources. They explain it differently, or maybe even better than I do. Frequently, I would say probably better, and in different ways. So here's several different resources you can look at. Independent sector we referenced. BLS is Bureau of Labor Statistics. If memory serves, it's part of Census or Labor Department. A couple different websites there. Hands-On Network provides a volunteer calculator. Nonprofit Quarterly has What's an Hour of Volunteer Time Worth article. Grantspace.org. You're looking at monetary value of volunteer time. Philanthropy.com. All these are pretty credible sources. So when you cite them with confidence. Bottom line, why put a value on time and talent? Well, because you want to demonstrate the community support of your coalition. People want to be part of something they perceive as successful. People want to be on a winning team. They want to be on something that is broadly supported. And your funders often almost always want to know that they're not just throwing money at something that nobody supports. They want to know you're going to get things done. And if you have broad community support, you're much more likely to get things done. And that's what comes down to use as a match when funding current and future programs. I've talked about that a lot for grant purposes. The one other thing I'm going to add here is partly you want to, demonstrating the community support, you want to brag in your media releases, in press releases, in any annual statements, in other ways. You want to brag to the media and brag to politicians. It's whether you call it bragging or highlighting or whatever you want to call it, you want to show people how important you are to the community. So that's why you put a value on time and talent. So you can really show how important your organization and the work you're doing is to the community. As always, we ask for an assignment. So the assignment is figure out what your last coalition meeting was worth, using all three methods if you can. Just take the numbers and plug them into the examples as we showed and come right through that, and we'll hope to share these through our Facebook page, VP Diabetes in Appalachia, and you can email this to Regina Tipton or your local facilitator. We also have a link to a recording of this webinar on our Facebook page, as well as you can often find these from other sources. We try to keep them on YouTube and a variety of other sources. Please send us your questions. I'm Stuart Burrell at apaphil.com. Regina Tipton at apaphil.com is another great resource, or any of our facilitators and staff can put you in touch with the right people to get your questions answered and hopefully get you the help you need. So a note, you will be emailed a survey in 1 to 2 weeks. There is a survey that we do. These are actually done by Ohio University, and the results are submitted to the CDC. This is part of our program evaluation, as we talked about previously. This is how we evaluate our program to make sure we're being as effective as possible. And it really helps us if you fill out these surveys. Coming soon will be part 2 of funding, obtaining treasure. So roadmap coming soon, Roadmap for Success Module 7, Funding, Part 2, Obtaining Treasure. We're going to talk mostly about grants. We're going to talk about a few other things probably. Um, if there's something that you want us to talk about specifically, please drop us a note. Let us know. We're here to help you. So we're going to use our time, talent, and treasure model to help coalition members learn ways to obtain funding for their organization. I hope you have a wonderful day, and please keep please keep up the great work you and your coalitions are doing to help make our communities, our friends, families, and neighbors happier, healthier places and happier, healthier people. Thank you.